He turned down every woman, until an Apache widow asked, "You want a wife? Or just shelter?" Ethan Cole was a man of silence, known across the frontier towns as the cowboy who had everything a woman might want: broad shoulders, quiet eyes, and a voice that could calm a frightened horse. But no one could tame him. Ever since the war ended, and the dust settled over his broken past, he lived alone on the outskirts of the territory, mending fences, trading cattle, and keeping his heart locked tighter than the gun on his hip. The townsfolk whispered about him, how he turned down every woman who offered him company, how even the preacher's daughter couldn't break through his wall. Ethan had learned that love was a luxury no man could afford in a world built on loss. One late summer evening, as he rode along the canyon trail, a cloud of smoke rose from the horizon. It wasn't the kind of smoke that came from campfires. It was the harsh black of burning homes. He rode faster, the horse's hooves pounding the dry earth, and when he reached the clearing, what he saw hollowed him out inside. A small Apache settlement had been attacked, the ground still warm from gunfire. Amid the ruin, a woman stood, her face streaked with ash, her arms wrapped protectively around two small children. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply stood there like a lone cedar after a storm, bent but not broken. Ethan dismounted and approached cautiously. "You need help?" he asked, voice low. Her eyes, sharp as obsidian, met his without fear. "I need a shovel," she said simply. He handed her one from his saddlebag, and together they buried the fallen, her husband among them. Not a word was spoken until the sun fell behind the hills. Then, as darkness took hold, the woman turned to him and said, "You ride alone. That's easy when there's no one waiting." He didn't answer. Instead, he built a small fire for her and the children, offering what food he had. She accepted with a nod but kept her distance. Her name, he learned later, was Ayanna. She was a widow, half Apache, half settler, caught between two worlds that both refused her. The next morning, Ethan saddled his horse and prepared to leave, but Ayanna stopped him. "You came when no one else did," she said. "If you go now, the next men who come won't be kind." She wasn't pleading. It was a statement of fact. Ethan looked at the small girl, clinging to her mother's skirt, and the boy who tried to act brave, holding a stick like a rifle. He sighed, feeling that old ache in his chest he thought had died long ago. "I'll take you to my place," he said finally. "You can stay till you figure what's next." That's how it began. For weeks they lived in uneasy peace on Ethan's ranch. Ayanna worked from dawn to dusk, tending the fire, fixing meals, and helping in the corral. She never complained, never asked for favors, and never sought pity. Ethan watched her with quiet respect. She carried herself with the kind of dignity born from pain. And in her silence, he saw the reflection of his own loneliness. The children, Lily and Toma, slowly filled the silence between them with laughter and life. But as the days grew shorter, the town began to talk. Some called Ayanna a curse, others a thief of a man's heart. When Ethan went to town for supplies, men sneered and asked if he'd gone soft. He ignored them all, until one night, when a ranch hand made the mistake of calling her a name too cruel to repeat. Ethan's fist landed before the man could finish his sentence. Blood spilled, and by the time the sheriff arrived, Ethan was already back home, pacing outside the cabin, fists still shaking. Ayanna came out quietly, her face calm under the moonlight. "You didn't have to fight for me," she said. "I didn't," he replied. "I fought because they don't know the truth." "And what truth is that?" she asked. "That you're stronger than all of us," he said simply. For the first time, she smiled, faint but real. The next morning, she found him fixing the fence line. She stood there watching for a long while before finally saying, "You turn down every woman who crosses your path. Why let me stay?" Ethan looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because you never asked to." The days rolled into autumn, and though no words of affection passed between them, something unspoken grew in the quiet. Ethan found himself listening for her voice, watching her hands work, noticing how the light caught her hair. Ayanna saw the way he cared for her children, how he taught Toma to ride and Lily to laugh again. Yet she also saw his fear, the kind that kept a man from ever reaching out. One evening, as a storm gathered on the horizon, she stepped outside and found him sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. The air was heavy, the kind that carried more than rain. She sat beside him and said, "You want a wife? Or just shelter?" Her question hung between them like thunder. Ethan turned, meeting her eyes. "I don't know if I remember how to want anything anymore." Ayanna's lips curved into a sad smile. "Then maybe it's time you remember." Lightning flashed across the plains, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt alive. But neither of them knew that the past they'd both buried was about to rise again. The storm broke that night, and with it came the ghosts of Ethan's past. A group of bounty riders appeared at the edge of his land, their faces hard, their voices colder than the wind. They weren't after Ethan, they were after Ayanna. They accused her tribe of aiding raids against settlers, demanding she be handed over. Ethan stood on the porch with his rifle in hand, rain pouring over his hat brim, and said, "She's not going anywhere." The leader spat in the mud. "You willing to die for her, cowboy?" Ethan didn't blink. "I already have." What followed was chaos. The thunder of hooves, the crack of gunfire, the roar of the storm drowning out the screams. Ethan fought like a man possessed, driven not by anger but by something far deeper. Ayanna, refusing to hide, grabbed her husband's old bow and joined the fight, her aim steady even through the rain. When silence finally fell, the earth was slick with blood and water, and only the wind dared to move. Ethan fell to his knees, wounded but alive. Ayanna ran to him, pressing her hands against his side. "You fool," she whispered. "You should have let me go." He winced, half smiling. "You asked if I wanted a wife or just shelter." "I finally know the answer." She looked at him, tears mixing with rain. "And? I want both," he said. "If it's you." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. The storm eased, as if the sky itself exhaled in relief. By dawn, the danger had passed, and Ethan's wounds were tended. The children slept inside, safe. Ayanna stood outside the cabin, watching the sun break through the clouds, and for the first time in years, she felt hope. Weeks turned into months. The land healed, the rumors faded, and life found rhythm again. Ethan rebuilt the fence and taught Toma how to work the ranch. Ayanna planted wildflowers near the graves of her people, honoring what was lost but never forgotten. One evening, as the light turned gold across the prairie, Ethan walked to where she stood and handed her a small turquoise ring he'd carved himself. "You once said you didn't need saving," he told her. "And you were right. You saved me instead." She looked at the ring, then at him. "You sure about this, cowboy?" He nodded. "I've been sure since the day you asked me that question." She slipped the ring onto her finger and smiled. "Then maybe it's time we stop surviving and start living." And so they did, two souls stitched together by loss. Fire and the quiet strength of love. The man who once turned down every woman finally found the one who didn't ask for his heart. She simply reminded him he still had one. The prairie wind carried their laughter into the horizon, a reminder that sometimes the hardest hearts are softened not by passion, but by the quiet courage of someone who refuses to give up on them.